You're listening to the Mike on the Right podcast.
Hello, everyone, and Merry Christmas. You are tuned into the Mike on the Right program, episode 34, Monday, December 22nd, 2025. And yes, I am broadcasting from the heart of the heartland in central Indiana, the crossroads of America, the great Hoosier state. Continue to like, share, subscriptions, 5-star ratings. Thank you so much for walking with me on this journey. You can get all episodes at mikeontheright.com. It'll take you to whether you want to listen to audio on Spotify, Apple Podcast, Amazon Music, iHeartRadio, or whether you want to watch the videos on YouTube. You can find it all there, all 34 episodes. As I said at the beginning of the show, Merry Christmas. If you're listening to this, it's pre-recorded right before Christmas, so if you listen after this, you'll obviously hear it after Christmas. But I just want to preface that I have very, very few notes. I have a couple of core notes that I want to talk about today. We're not talking about any news. We're not talking about any of that. We'll do a year in review on the next episode, episode 35, which will release right before the new year, kind of a recap of the year and some of the top items and things I want to discuss and looking forward to what's happening next year as we kind of wrap 2025 and get into 2026. But today I want to focus on what is on everybody's mind as we go into this week. You know, if you're listening on the release date again, December 22nd, just a couple of days before Christmas, before the big gauntlet. I am recording this on a Sunday, just got out of church not long ago. And there's just so much on my mind in this season. And so I'm kind of freestyling a little bit. Again, I've got a little bit of structure. But as I told you at Thanksgiving, I didn't plan to do a newsworthy episode at Christmas or Thanksgiving. And if this show continues over the years, that will continue to be the tradition. I want to talk today about the hope of Christmas. And for some of you, that's going to be, oh, wow, that's, it's kind of an interesting title and topic. And for others, it's going to be like, oh, here we go again. Just another repetitious piece of Christianity. But man, I sit here today. I just got, like I said, just got out of church not long ago, and this season, as I talked about in the Thanksgiving episode, how Christmas season there's kind of only three categories. There are people who are kind of agnostic to it altogether. There are folks that are really just jazzed up by the season, and there are folks that have experienced loss or a tough year or what have you, or something negative over Christmas seasons and Thanksgiving seasons past, and it's just a drag. I know people who have experienced loss, and I mean, like I said, I lost two close family members within days of each other right around Christmas and New Year's a couple of years ago. And so that's, one of them is behind me, Granny Neal. You can see, if you're watching the video, right behind me in the Jingle Bell picture frame, and I put her up for the Christmas season as kind of that remembrance of the importance of the season. For Granny Neal, everything that we had as a family growing up, as the Neal Lindley family, was all kind of centered around that Christmas Eve, and so that everybody on Christmas Day could be at their respective places. And I just remember as a kid being around all of my cousins and uncles and aunts and everyone. And Granny Neal was kind of always that matriarch, really that central piece, really, to all of it. When it was Thanksgiving, she'd be sitting at the counter and she'd be doing a lot of the sous chef work as I was growing up. She did make dishes too, but some of that stuff, she's just sitting there, she's chopping the onions and she's chopping the carrots and she's doing all the things, and everything just kind of happened and worked around her. And then, the same thing for Christmas Eve, a lot of times it was really built around her. And maybe we didn't realize it at the time, but as kind of the years went on, and then when she passed to be with Jesus, it was kind of all built around that. And when she was in the assisted living facility towards the ending years, we even all went there on Christmas Eve. She had a run of the place, and it was all kind of built around that joy and that of all the grandkids being together and the aunts and uncles, and it was so great. And now that we don't have, now that we don't have her here with us, it all kind of, everyone's kind of doing their own thing. And that's fine. That time changes, traditions change, things change. And it's just so, when I think of this season, that's who I think of. That's why I put that photo up behind me. But I would say to you today, the hope of Christmas is built in the Christmas story. And I want to talk about that. There are folks that, I've been talking to just over the last several months about difficult family dynamics, or sickness, or like I said, or loss. And in all of those things that are true and important, there's still hope in that. And again, I'm just kind of yapping today because I really felt on my heart, this generation, specifically millennials, we have had obviously the past generations that have not focused on mental health and all just kind of just grin and bear things and just get over it and what have you. And there's certainly wisdom in some of those things to live in forgiveness, but that also doesn't mean that boundaries aren't necessary and important. And a lot of times those boundaries really get put up around this type of season. Traditions change, and I've got a kid now and more on the way, and our Christmas from being up in Northwest Indiana with our family, I didn't want my son to have to go up there and then either wake up in a hotel Christmas morning and come back home or try to drive in the middle of the night to get him back home. I wanted it to be here. And those boundaries get picked up, but also in the hard stuff. And maybe it's not just the Christmas season, but certainly you can feel them difficulty then, the difficulty of that then. It's good. And I say this today, it's good to set up boundaries. It is. But man, I also think about this time of year that this is where sometimes the overdoing of boundaries or the overdoing of this, again, I don't want to discount mental health whatsoever. I've been a big advocate for that. But I want to say too, just kind of in this season that, man, everybody, family that has been helpful and hurtful are human. And not every circumstance is perfect where everyone can, that the boundaries that you set up are, sometimes they're temporary, sometimes they're permanent, sometimes they're necessary, and sometimes they're not. And just the challenge to be discerning in this time, because man, you don't know what you've got till it's gone. Again, that there's abusive relationships and manipulation, and there's all kinds of things outside of that. And so hear me today, kind of when I talk about this, as I kind of get into this message of hope, especially this time of year, is just don't, I don't even know kind of what I want to say. It's just like that. Just don't take those things too far. Sometimes don't get selfish in this season. Love one another as Christ has loved all of us. You don't have to forget. You don't have to tear down boundaries that are healthy. But man, just really be discerning in this season, because it is just as tough on other people oftentimes that it is on you. And this focus of mental health, just like in anything, people take things too far, or people take it, in a direction that they just kind of use it as the scapegoat, just like anything. And I just want to challenge that right now and today, is that all of us are human. All of us have triumphs and travails and struggles. And make sure that all the boundaries are just happy and healthy and good ones. And that for all the other things, don't let the small stuff get in the way in this season. And all equates down to when I talk about the hope that the birth of Jesus set before us to wash away our sin. If there's anyone that has a gripe, it would most absolutely be Jesus. And it would absolutely be the most correct, most right, 100%, no space in between it, gripe. He's right. He would be right. All of the things and all of the sins and all of the unfairness and all of the shame and all of the guilt and all of the actions thrust upon someone who is fully God and fully man. And he took it all, and he didn't do any of it. He didn't participate in any of it. and yet he took that on, is such an astonishing story. And again, that's not a reason to say there should be no barriers and no boundaries. And that some people need to just understand and forgive. And some people need to okay, you know what? This is it, you have kids now, grandparents. Now your kids have kids. And they're raising them differently. Like, all of those are healthy boundaries, and you need to understand just as much as the other. And Jesus took on all of that sin and all of that shame and all of that guilt for each and every one of us to be free. And don't squander that freedom. Don't squander that hope. The birth of Jesus is a promise fulfilled. The birth of Christ is the arrival of the long-awaited Messiah, keeping his first promise in Genesis, reaffirming the prophets, like in Isaiah. And it's a humble entrance. Put that in perspective, the humble entrance with eternal significance. And in this season, allowing ourselves to be as humble as we can be, equally as humble. The person that was fully God and fully man comes through a virgin birth in one of the worst circumstances. No, there was not a birthing center. No, there were not modern medications. No, the epidural wasn't coming. In a dark and dirty place, the one who put it all on the line for us is born in Bethlehem. And this is what hope shines out of the darkest, dirtiest place in Bethlehem, in the manger, in the stable, out back. No grand entrance. And that's the glimmer of hope that all of humanity and all of earth and every tribe and tongue and nation glean around. And that is the nucleus of the life we have today. This is absolutely a season of gladness and hurt, and hope and despair, and sorrow and laughter. And just don't miss the importance of this season for yourself and for those around you. And making sure that we are being who God calls us to be, which is a light. A light to those that, some things that happened to you as a kid were unfair. The way you were raised is unfair. Some of the trauma should not have happened. All of those things are true. And some people continue in that manipulation and in that whatever. And again, I don't want to discount the season. Discount what happens just because it's the season. And you have to discern those for yourself. But for all other things, God sent his Son for each and every one of us to have hope. In the end, the light of eternity. But even in the today and now in those around us and loving those, Jesus came for everyone. He came for the ER doctor that gives his entire life to save others. He gave himself for the janitor. He gave himself for the bank robber. He gave himself for the manipulative parent. He gave himself for the drug dealer. He gave himself for the politician. He gave himself for the entertainment industry, the creative folks and songwriters. He came for everyone, regardless of circumstance and position, regardless of what's been done to others. And so remember that this season. Remember the hope that Jesus represents and that we are called to reflect that hope. Hope still enters in our broken times, in our brokenness. The world is anxious and divided, and it's overwhelming. It's overwhelming. The news, the bad news, and the wars, and things happening at home with the economy, and what's happening right in our families, all good and bad, all of those things. Yet Christmas reminds us that God steps directly into the human mess. He dropped he dropped Jesus in a mess. He dropped right there and it didn't shy away from it. The same hope that came to the troubled first century world still breaks through ours today. It boggles my mind. God works through ordinary people in ordinary places in ordinary situations. Just as the shepherds became the first messengers, today the work of restoring truth and courage and faith and community doesn't depend on the elites. That doesn't mean that elite people don't partake in that. But we're not looking to the elites. We're looking to you hear that, God doesn't call the qualified, he qualifies the called. He can do both things. But there's a ton of people throughout history and humanity who should never have been in the places they have been, should never have walked where they have walked, should never have been in the rooms that they've been in, or had the influence that they had, all throughout the Bible and all throughout history. Yet there they were. That's the hope that Jesus represents. Light still wins. The message of Christmas confronts every form of despair, every form of hurt, every form of what's happened to you as a child or as an adult or at work or in whatever, with that same truth that darkness, that despair, that anxiety, that hatefulness, that sin does not get the final word. That is hope. We know that that's not the end. The end is eternity. The end is we already know God wins. The gospel began with a single light in Bethlehem and continues through the light of the believers that carry it in our homes and in our work and in our country and in the nations of the world. But remember, it starts in the family. It starts at home with the kids you're raising and the tribe around you and the village and parents and grandparents and great-grandparents and aunts and uncles and stepmoms and stepdads and take your pick, godmothers and godfathers. It's tough. This world is a fallen world. And I just want to say that today. I know this is kind of a yap. If you was this on TikTok, this would be a life yap. Because again, I had some notes that I really wanted to talk about with this episode as I wrap up this discussion. But please do not forget what God has called us to be. That doesn't mean don't start your own traditions. It doesn't mean build healthy boundaries. It doesn't mean don't have hard conversations. But it means this season is so important and you don't know what you have until it's gone. You have the opportunity to make someone feel special and loved and cared for, regardless of the mess they've been in, regardless of the mess that they may have caused you, outside of the things that are healthy. There is otherwise no excuse to turn your back. Because Jesus didn't turn his back. He did not. In the most mess, he in fact took on the very things that he didn't do. And so I say all this today as a reminder, as I wrap this episode up. It's going to be short. Because I want you to go listen to to something else. Christmas music and get ready for things with your family and trips and travel. Be gracious to one another. Be understanding with one another. Don't put expectations on one another that shouldn't be there or that can't be met. Whether that's parents on the kids or vice versa. Live in the light in the hope that Jesus himself represented fully God and fully man. And that's tough because we're not God. But he was the example of that for those who were unlovable, for the ones that were tough, for the ones that persecuted him and others. Let's do that this Christmas. Let's provide hope for others, that life can be better, that we still love them, that we still care, that healthy boundaries are good and important, and mental health is good and important, but we don't use those as crutches or excuses to turn our back, because Jesus didn't turn his back. Friends and folks, thank you. I'm going to share this, if you're listening to this on Monday, about the time this episode drops. I'm going to be sharing this on the radio up in Northwest Indiana on WJOB. A bit more succinct of a message. I have a little shorter time. But man, don't miss it. Don't miss the opportunity to be hope to others, to be loving to others, to open your door to others. Not at the sacrifice of all the healthy things, but not using those things beyond what they're designed to be. Merry Christmas to each and every one of you. As I said, this is episode 34. The 35th episode next week will be kind of a wrap on the year and where things are going in 2026. And then moving right along in 2026 as episodes come out with leading up to the 2026 election and all the things going on around us. Thank you so much for listening. MikeOnTheRight.com. You can listen to this episode and all others in audio or video format. It'll take you wherever you get your podcasts. It'll take you to YouTube. Thank you so much. Merry, Merry Christmas to each and every one of you. Have a great week.